Every idea, every story starts with a spark, a tiny light that glows. But to speak up, to be heard, to innovate takes courage. We're here to ignite that tiny spark. We're here to foster Canadian voices, our narratives, our ideas. We're here to spark courage. Our logo is a showcase for our culture, our storytellers, our innovators, and it reflects our creators and communities. The Spark is a catalyst to push boundaries, to drive the future, and for Canadian voices to be heard on a global stage.
Talking about ways we can elevate. Stepping up, staring, we escalate. Don't try to separate, we'll get together and celebrate. I can do everything, I just don't hesitate. I can do anything. Get it, got it, good. You got me, I know that you got me, good. Get it, got it, good.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Future of Film Showcase presented by Cineplex Entertainment and CBC GEM. My name is Jocelyn Lau, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer this year. On behalf of the FOFS team, we sincerely thank you for joining us today. FOFS is proud to recognize our public funders, Telefilm Canada, the ArtsFest Business and Arts Program, and the Government of Canada. Today, we are pleased to present our How to Get Funded panel presented by the Canada Media Fund. Our Director of Accessibility, Carmel Cachero, will be with us providing ASL interpretation. Closed captioning is made available as well. This conversation, along with a list of our industry program and film schedule, are available to view on fofs.ca, and our official selection is streaming on CBC GEM. Thank you for being with us today, and without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to our CEO, Eric Bizzarri.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it. We hope you get what you need out of this conversation. And of course, each of the funders we have available to you today will be presenting a bit of a presentation on their organization and their funding models. And then feel free to chime into the chat with questions, and we're going to get to them in the last 10 to 15 minutes of the panel. So I will pass it over to Shelley Kultich from the Canada Media Fund.
Hi, I'm Shelley Kultich. I'm a Deputy Director at Telefilm Canada, and I work on the CMF Program Administration team. We administer all of the contracts and financing from the Canada Media Fund, and I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint to walk you through the Canada Media Fund and its programs. So the Canada Media Fund receives financial contributions from the Government of Canada, specifically the Department of Canadian Heritage and Canada's cable, satellite, and IPTV distributors. In the 2022-2023 fiscal year, we have approximately $365 million. We have many different programs at the moment. We have probably around 30 programs or so. There are our main one is the Convergent Television Fund, and then we have the Experimental Fund for digital media, and then we have various specialty funds, which I will get to as we go through this presentation. So the Convergent stream supports the development and production of Canadian audiovisual content for broadcast television or digital distribution. The experimental stream supports innovative and leading edge interactive digital media projects. I'm only going to talk about the Experimental Fund briefly because I think most people here are interested in television and film funding. But the Experimental Fund funds rich interactive content, video games, apps, and software. We have this year approximately $45 million to spend on projects that are either innovative or have commercial potential. And this also includes a web series program called the Digital Linear Series Program. There are other digital linear series programs out there like Bell Fund and IPF, which are good when you have a new web series. Our particular web series program is for second seasons or later. But mainly what I'm going to talk about today is the Convergent stream. So this is money to fund television and also related digital media content or discoverability activities. We fund 4 genres. We fund drama, which really just means scripted, so comedy is included in that. Variety and performing arts, documentaries, and children's and youth programming. In 2022-2023 fiscal year, we have approximately $320 million to spend. We're about halfway through our funding year at this point, so some of the programs I'm going to present to you might already have passed the deadline at this point, but they will come back next year, so don't worry. So other than the 4 eligible genres, project must meet 3 essential requirements. I won't go in too much detail, but basically the project has to be certified by CAVCO, which is the Canadian Audiovisual Content Office or Certification Office, which also administers the federal tax credits for TV and film, and achieve approximately or equivalent to 10 out of 10 points, which is basically your key personnel must be Canadian or permanent residents of Canada. The underlying rights must be owned significantly and meaningfully developed by Canadians. And the TV component is shot and set primarily in Canada, although there are exceptions. For example, in documentary, that rule is waived because you can shoot a documentary anywhere. And in drama or kids and youth, it can take place in a setting that could feasibly be Canada, but, it doesn't have to have, Mounties and Tim Hortons and hockey sticks in it to prove it. It could just, be generic. So just, no green money or blue mailboxes, obviously, but just keep it generic and that will be fine. Each project must be convergent to qualify for this fund. So it has to have 2 convergent criteria. It has to be either aired on a CRTC licensed Canadian broadcaster, an online service, or a VOD service. And then the second criteria, it could be one of those 3, but also an online service owned by someone other than a broadcaster, but still Canadian owned. Or you can budget for discoverability efforts for digital media. So like, whatever would help people to discover your show. And you also must, in order to apply to the CMF, there are some funds where you don't need a broadcaster initially to apply, but most of them you do. And for the ones that you don't initially, you will, if you get selected for funding, you will need to find a broadcaster willing to give you a license fee or a development fee in order to, actually get contracted with that fund. So, we are largely dependent on the broadcasters to support your project as well in order for us to fund. There are ineligible genres. I won't read all of these. You can see them. But basically, the 4 genres we support, there are also like a variety of things we don't do. We don't do lifestyle television or reality television, talk shows, game shows, magazine shows, sports, news, and so on and so forth. We only really support the 4 genres that I mentioned. There is some leeway under the children's and youth genre. So if you're interested in doing a kids game show or a kids magazine show, that kind of thing has been supported in the past. But there are still in the actual, if you went into the details of the guidelines, there's things under children. Well, we're more flexible. It still says things like we don't do reality shows, we don't do lifestyle shows. So you really do need to, look at the guidelines to make sure what you want to do would be eligible for this fund. So here's where I have like all the programs listed. I'm not going to get into every single one of them in detail. I mean, you can take a screenshot of this if you want to, but basically we have in development and also in production, which is the next slide, we have what we call first come, first serve funds, selective funds, and those selective funds usually have a jury that selects the projects. First come, first serve are funds that are open at a certain date and close a certain date, but they can close earlier if they get used up on the first day, which can happen. And then we have envelope programs, and the envelope programs basically are controlled by the broadcasters. They get to decide who gets envelope money by the projects that they select, and they have a certain amount of money available to them depending on the size of the broadcaster, the historical access they've had to the CMF, and various other criteria like regional producers or diverse producers and such. So the ones that might interest this group, early stage development, which is coming up in October, it's for writers, but you do need to have a minimum amount of produced written work. I would suggest taking a look at the guidelines there. There is also a special carve out called diversity of voices. That's 25% of the fund must be spent on diverse producers. We have some funds that have already happened, like the pre-development program that might interest you. It's over now, but it will be coming back. It says it opened on June 7th. This is one of the ones where it actually opened on June 7th, closed on June 7th, because there was so much interest that it got used up on the first day. But it's you need to get a letter of interest from a broadcaster to apply to that. And it's for, script writing and developing an idea, but it'll be back next year. And there's also the pilot program for racialized communities. Obviously, you need to be Black or person of color in order to apply to this fund. There's a pre-development and development fund for that opening on September 13th, and the Indigenous program, pre-development and development, which already opened and has closed at this point. The money's been spent, but it will be back next year. And then our regular development program, where you do need a broadcaster to contribute in order to come into that. And then, of course, we have the same sort of thing, selective, first come, first serve, and envelope programs for production funding. Many different types of funds. A lot of them have already happened at this point in the year. Excuse me. But these ones, you definitely need a broadcaster to come on board in order to get the money. The pilot program for racialized communities and the POV program, you don't. But if you get selected, you will have to get one. So just something to keep in mind. It's very important to develop relationships with broadcasters in order to get CMF funding, and or develop a relationship with a producer who's experienced, like bring an executive producer on board who has those relationships already that can help get you a pitch with a broadcaster for your project. So yeah, and I've already explained how the envelopes work, so I'll just skip this slide. But basically, you get a license from a broadcaster or a development fee. They decide if you get CMF or not. Then you come to us for funding, and then we do the financing contract here at Telefilm. CMF has an equity and inclusion strategy. Last year was the first year of that. Various funds either require that you be in these communities in order to apply, like the ones that I've mentioned, Indigenous, the pilot program for racialized communities. And then various funds have targets that they need to spend at least 25% on people that are, or companies that are from, or companies that either employ key personnel from a diverse community or are owned by a diverse community. And so last year it was Indigenous people and racialized communities. This year we added 2 categories, the 2S LGBTQ plus communities and persons with disability. We have a thing that we call persona ID, where people can sign up to self-declare themselves into one of these communities. And the CMF is collecting this data to like develop, programs for the future that will help these communities gain more access to the system. And okay, so I think this is my second last slide. I don't know whether I've gone too slow or too fast, but in any case, our deadlines are on the website. Also on the website, if you go to cmf-fmc.ca and you click on the hamburger menu on the top right-hand corner, you can click on, then like a drop down will come and you'll see our programs, and you click on the little down arrow, all of the programs will show up. You can click on any of them. And then about halfway down the page, you'll see the guidelines. And then you'll see beside that view reference documents. The reference documents, you always would want to download Appendix A and Appendix B because they have very good information in them. Appendix A describes all of our genres. It describes the diverse communities in more detail. Appendix B has a lot of the more picky details like the accounting policies and the insurance policies and stuff like that. But you want to definitely get the guidelines and those appendixes. And then you want to scroll a bit halfway down the page to this section, application documents. And you'll usually see tabs, and like in the development or production tabs, it will have a list of required documents. Like it's basically a checklist for what you have to prepare to apply to a fund. And then I'll have budget templates, a director shareholder form for the company, and various other things. But also, if you click on the need help tab on any of the funds, you will get the application guides, how to make an application. You'll get broadcaster agreement form user guide. That's an agreement that you have to make in our system and send to the broadcaster to approve, and they all have access to our system. Oh, by the way, our system is called Dialogue. That's why it's called Dialogue User Guides. Dialogue is the application portal that we use to apply for funding at both CMF and Telefilm. And the one little disconnect is that Dialogue is on the telefilm.ca website. It's not on the CMF website because CMF is a separate company and we administer their funds for them, but the funds are actually administered via Telefilm. So you have to go through the Telefilm application portal called Dialogue. So that could be a little confusing, but in any case, all of these user guides are here under the need help tab, so you can always get help. You can also call our coordination office. So here's the information, the email and the phone number for our coordination department. We have a group of coordinators who can help you figure out how to do an application, what you might be eligible for. Here's my personal business email and contact information. You can also call me. And then also lastly, just to stay up to date on CMF news, you can sign up at the bottom of the website. You can put your email in and hit submit, and you can get our newsletter, which comes out, I don't know, every month or so. And get, and it also will send you press releases when new funds open or when, various significant things happen. And that's it. So take a screenshot of this page for sure, because you'll probably want to ask our coordination department or myself some questions. I'll also be at the virtual meetings later this afternoon, so you can ask me anything that you're interested in knowing. And that's it from me. So I will back out of this and stop sharing my screen.
Amazing. Thanks, Shelley. Really appreciate that. That was really insightful. So again, we are going to be able to take questions from those participating. And yeah, we're going to be able to do that in the last 15 minutes. So I guess just going back onto my grid. And also I wanted to mention that we do have Carmel Cachero here doing ASL interpretation for us. Huge round of applause for Carmel in doing this today. Lovely, lovely work. Amazing. Peggy Lanus from Telefilm.
Thanks, Eric.
No problem.
I also have a quick PowerPoint that I will pull up on the screen. Great. Oops. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, great. As opposed to the CMF, Telefilm's focus is feature film. I'm just going to go through quickly through some of our programs, funding programs, but I'm going to focus on Talent to Watch, which is our emerging filmmaker program. So at Telefilm, we have several programs. So we fund the development and production for features. So we have development, we have our main production program, which is split into two streams, the low budget, which is for features whose budgets range between 250,000 and 3.5 million. And we have the bigger budget, which is 3.5 million and over. We have our theatrical documentary program. It's a feature theatrical documentary program, and also the Talent to Watch program, which really focuses on first features across the country. The Talent to Watch is a national program, so we have one opening deadline a year. It just passed. It was May 3rd. We also provide support for distribution and marketing. So either if your feature was supported by Telefilm or not, if you have a theatrical distributor attached, or you're self-distributing and you have a confirmed exhibitor attached to your project, you can submit an application for marketing assistance. And for those, the only fund we have that can provide support to short films is actually our international festivals and event support. So we provide travel grants so if your short has been selected at a festival, if you have a look at our website, you'll see all of the festivals we support, and we provide travel grants for filmmakers and their teams to attend the festivals. So Talent to Watch, as I mentioned, is our emerging filmmakers. So it's for first-time feature film teams. We have three streams. There are three streams. The streams are basically entry into the program. They're not separate funding streams. So we have our industry partner stream, which is we work with about 60 partners across the country. These partners are film schools. So for example, in Toronto, York is a partner, Toronto Film School, and we also have some festivals that are partners. So if you've attended Real World's incubator program, you can apply to them and they will recommend your project to Telefilm. And within the industry stream, there are three components. So the main component, we have an Indigenous component that's for projects whose creative team all identifies Indigenous, and our official language minority component. That's basically for teams who are Francophones living outside of Quebec or Anglophones in Quebec. We have the festival selection stream. So let's say you're a director and your short film was selected at a festival. You can apply directly without having to come through the partner stream. And if you look in our guidelines, we have a list of about 15 festivals that are eligible for this stream. And new this year, we launched the Filmmaker Apply Direct stream, which was in line with our equity and inclusion strategy. So this stream is specifically for Indigenous, Black, people of color, women, gender diverse, and 2S LGBTQI individuals, and persons with disabilities. So basically, if any team identifies within these communities, you can apply directly to the Talent to Watch program without having to qualify through one of the two previous streams. So the eligibility for Talent to Watch, it's very straightforward. It's for first-time feature film key creatives. So the director, screenwriter, or producer, including co-producers or co-directors, this has to be your first feature. And in order to be eligible, all you really need is to have previously done a short film or equivalent. When I say equivalent, it could be a music video, it could be a web series, anything, short TV, any of that can give you access to this program. So for Talent to Watch, there's two genre that are, so it's, if you have a theatrical doc, that's eligible, and for fiction as well. And it can be in English, French, or Indigenous, or in another language. This is a new element that we've made eligible this year. So if your film is 100% in, in Greek, Italian, it could be eligible, but, we do require that it's kind of in line with the content. And, we will do what I recommend, if you're not sure about anything, eligibility criteria, or if your project is in a different language, definitely give us a call. We're there to answer questions, and sometimes it helps to have this discussion before you consider applying to Talent to Watch, or we can guide you to which program would be most appropriate for your project. So for Talent to Watch, your project needs to meet the 8 out of 10 on the CAFCO scale. So what that is, there's 10 key creative positions, and they need the individuals need to be Canadian or landed immigrants. So you can go on the CAFCO site, and you can find the list of the 10 key creative positions. So under the festival stream and the apply direct stream, you must apply with an incorporated company. So I often get questions. So how do I decide which stream I'm better off applying through the partner stream, festival stream, or filmmaker, or the apply direct stream? When you come in through the partner stream, you don't need to have an incorporated company, but the other two streams, because Telefilm we can't receive applications from individuals, it must be an incorporated company. That's the only disadvantage from coming in through these two other streams. And the key creative team must own 100% of the copyright. It doesn't have to be owned equally between the three creatives, producer, writer, director. It can be any combination. So the incorporated company must own 100% of the copyright. Oftentimes we have teams who are working with other producers and they share the copyright, and it can be a little bit of a puzzle to figure out. So definitely, like I said, have a look at the guidelines. All the information is on our website. What I'm presenting today is just a brief overview. So really, I encourage everyone who's interested in possibly applying to Talent to Watch to look at the guidelines and reach out to either myself or one of the program coordinators. Their contact information is on the website. So Talent to Watch, the funding that is provided. So for a fiction feature, you can qualify for up to $250,000, and that can represent 100% of the total funding. As opposed to our other production funding programs where the Telefilm contribution cannot exceed 49% of the total budget. And for theatrical docs, you can access up to $150,000, which again can be 100% of the funding. Budgets, Talent to Watch, when it was originally launched about 15 years ago, no, not 15, 10 years, almost 10 years ago, sorry. It was initially launched as a micro budget program, and at the time our budget was capped at $250,000. We've recently increased the budget to $500,000 for both fiction and theatrical docs. So it can be anywhere between $150,000 and $500,000 for a doc, or $250,000 and $500,000 for fiction. How to apply? So we have one deadline a year, and as I mentioned, it just passed May 3rd. Our goal is this year, we received 157 applications, which is almost 60% more than what we received in previous years, and we'll be supporting between 12 and 15 projects this year. As Shelley mentioned earlier, you apply through our dialogue platform, for the festival and apply direct stream, the teams apply directly, and for industry partner stream, the partner applies for the team. I won't go through the required documents that you need to submit for your project. It's all detailed on in the guidelines, which I encourage everyone to have a look at. So how we make our decisions. So it's based on advisory committee, which is a jury. So we put together, it's a combination of internal and external members, and they review the applications, and they base their review on 4 criteria. So they look at the creative elements. For Talent to Watch, you submit a pitch video, including on top of your script. We look at the team's track record, the project viability, which basically means, does the budget you're submitting kind of go with your director's vision, the project you're submitting? Are you trying to make a $2 million project for $500,000? That's what we mean by project viability. And we also look at the cultural impact and audience reach potential. So where is this project going to fit in the marketplace? What are you targeting in terms of festivals? how well do is your target audience? Have you clearly identified and how you intend on reaching that target audience? What's your promotion strategy? So that's what we look at and score when we're evaluating the project. This application path. So I just want to talk a little bit about our data collection project, which was launched in January of this year. So when you submit an application to Telefilm, every key creative member that's attached to your project. So in this case, it'll be the writer, director, producer, will have an opportunity to provide, information about your identity. It's all confidential. It's all done by through a secure portal, and it's all on a voluntary basis at the moment. The only program that it's mandatory, it's actually through the Apply Direct stream, because we need to validate that you meet the criteria of that program to be eligible for that program. So the data is used, to inform us, and when we're designing our programs, when we're updating our programs. It's also we strive to have a balanced portfolio at the end of the year once we make our decision. So the only way we can do that to ensure that we have good representation across the country is by having this data. But like I said, this data is confidential, and you have the opportunity to decide how your information is used. You can decide you don't want it to be used for decision making. You just want it to be used for statistics. It's really the applicant decides how their data is used when the application is submitted. And lastly, I want to touch on our mentorship framework program. So when we relaunched it this year, we launched a mentorship program. We're working with the National Screen Institute and INIS in Quebec. So for every project that will get selected, every team will be matched with a mentor that will help them navigate the whole production process. They'll work with the team to, get their contract signed with Telefilm, to connect them with broadcasters, distributors, to help them, from pre-production all the way to release. So we decided to implement this mentorship program based on feedback we got from past participants, industry stakeholders. Every team will decide, has a say who they work with, and the NSI will do the initial matchmaking, but it's going to be an organic process. So if you have a mentor that you want to work with, you'll have that opportunity to bring them in as well. And all the mentors will be compensated by Telefilm. So this is outside of the grant that will be provided. So the grant really is for the project to go on camera, on screen, and the mentors will be compensated individually by Telefilm. So the compensation is there to ensure the mentors are, meaningfully involved and they stay on through the duration of the production process.
That's awesome. And again, just a reminder, there's going to be a small Q&A available. So just keep posting your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Amazing. So last but certainly not least, Peter Kingston from Toronto Arts Council.
Hi, everybody. I don't have a PowerPoint, but now I wish I did. They were so beautiful to watch. So you can just stare at me as I talk. So I'll just sort of go over what the Toronto Arts Council is. And where you can find funding to be making media arts projects, and then sort of think through some of the things that TAC does differently than Telefilm Canada or the Canadian Fund that we saw earlier. So first, the Toronto Arts Council is funded by the taxpayers of the City of Toronto. And we only fund individuals living in Toronto. So Toronto goes from Scarborough to Etobicoke, from the water to North York. So if you live in that catchment, you're able to apply for a TAC grant. The city gives TAC around $25 million to fund across the arts. So that's dance and literature and theater, community arts, music, literature, visual and media arts. And we try to also have other programs that create arts in the parks, arts in historic sites, and the leadership program in particular to help individuals in the arts to realize some leadership goals. So the visual media arts program, I'll in particular talk about the media arts program, is where we fund films, videos, video games, apps, any sort of performances that deal with technology, sound installations, audio things, online projects. So we receive around 300 applications per year. The deadline is mid-October, October 15th. The guidelines aren't out yet. They'll be out at the end of June or beginning of July. So you should take a look when they get out. So if you'd like to apply, I'll talk about application. We only fund individuals. So we only fund directors. So if you're a producer or we won't fund your company, we'll fund you. And we won't fund your producer, we'll fund you as a director. Or if you're a game maker, you're the game maker. Or if you're an audio person, you're the audio person. So as an individual, you're making the application, put forward to the Toronto Arts Council. What we require is a proposed use of grant. How are you going to use this money? A full budget and examples of past work. You have to live in the city of Toronto. You can't be an undergrad student. You can be a grad student as long as this project has nothing to do with your grad work. You have to have at least made one project before. That can be a project that we can't fund. So that could have been a project like a music video. We don't fund music videos. Or a project that you made when you didn't live in the city of Toronto. That is fine. That's about all you need. Well, there's a couple other things, but they're pretty easy to understand. So we will only fund projects that are less than $250,000. So if you've been sitting here for the last 40 minutes wondering who's going to fund your smaller project, you've waited long enough to get to me. We will fund your smaller project. We will fund, if you're an emerging or level 1, we call them at TAC, we'll fund up to $6,000, on level 2 up to $12,000. Your budget can be up to $250, and just demonstrate where you're getting all the funds. That can be from other councils like Ontario Arts Council, Canada Council from the Arts, or if you're making a theatrical documentary like Peggy was saying, there can be $150,000 budget. You can be making that as well. Go to Telefilm. Or you can be having bake sales or getting money from, dead ants or wherever you can find some money. That's also completely fine. Then, and if you have distribution, that's fine. You do not have to have any distribution. You do not have to have anyone who's planning to show the work at the end. This is only to make the work. So you can apply either for production or post-production. So you can apply to make it from the start, or you've finished the shooting and you want to do a color correction or sound or anything else on it. That's fine. We do not fund you to distribute it or fund you to get it out in the world. We just fund you to make it. We expect that all the people working on the project, the directors, the actors, the camera people, are all being paid to do the project. In particular, often directors are applying and they're not paying themselves, and the panel does not look kindly upon that. So the panel is probably primarily directors of their own projects. So that's probably why they don't look kindly that you're not paying yourself. The panel is artists, media artists from the city of Toronto who sit on the panel. The panel changes every single year with new panelists, and they make all the decisions. So I don't ever say yes or no to a project. I'm here to help you sort of think through your project and put it forward to the panel. So if you're writing an application and you're wanting like my eyes to look at it, I'm happy to do so. Or if you want to sit down and talk about your project and how do you want to set it up for the panel, I'm happy to do so. I like going for coffee. Now that COVID is quote unquote over, we can go for coffee instead of me sitting in my little studio here. And we can talk about the project and think through how the best way to approach the panel with it. You don't get a ton of words to talk about your project. So you have to sort of really strategize on what you want to put forward. Again, we have equity, as the other two were speaking about. Equity, we say that 20% of the grants will go to people within, I guess now 5 equity categories. And that's 2S LGBTQIP, persons with disability, deaf and disabled, including mental illness, then people of color, Black, and Indigenous. So if you qualify in any one of those, you can click those off on our voluntary sheet to say that you belong to one of those. You don't have to tell the panel that you're belonging to any of those divisions, but if it comes up in your application, that's also fine too. So yeah, as I said, 20%. We also have 2 different or several other spaces, or at least 2 other spaces at TAC that you can apply to make a media arts project. So and those two are open all year round. So we have the Black Arts. So Black Arts is always taking applications, I think except for October or November, something like that. They're always taking applications, and you can apply as a director to be making a project there. And same with Indigenous arts. We have an Indigenous arts, it's open on all year round. And if you're Indigenous, you can apply there. And Indigenous refers to Indigenous of Canada. So that's, so Indigenous of Canada. What else was I going to say? So as I said, you have $6,000 to $12,000 you'll be able to apply for. We fund about 20% of applications, give or take. And hoping, and as I said, we would get about 300 per year. You receive the funds, or you receive the announcements for the funds by the end of the year, so usually before Christmas. I think that's probably all I need to say. When the guidelines come out and the sheets come out to apply, then please apply. Peter@torontoartscouncil.org is my email. It's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And again, now that it's summer, I'm happy to hang outside and drink coffee and talk about film.
Amazing. Thanks, Peter. This is great. Okay, so we have a few questions in the chat, but just we'll keep them rolling in.
Sorry, Eric, I just want to add something. So I just realized I made a small mistake when I was presenting. So that's why I said, please look at the guidelines. I may have forgotten some details, but when I was talking about eligibility and the 8 out of 10 on the CAFCO, I said you have to be a Canadian resident or a landed immigrant. It's a Canadian resident or permanent Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, not a landed immigrant. So I just wanted to make that correction. But like I said,
awesome.
Trust the guidelines. I may have forgotten a few details.
No problem. Thanks, Peggy. So let's start with, hi, Stephanie Herrera. So I guess this is more of a question for Peter. Do you recommend people hiring grant writers?
That's always a tricky situation, I think. Your work best, but if language isn't your easiest, or your English is your second language, hiring someone to help you through that it might be a good idea, but making sure you're hiring someone who knows about the art that you're making and the art that is expected and who the audience is that you're writing to is even probably more important. Again, like, if you are writing for the Toronto Arts Council, making sure you know that you're writing to other filmmakers. And so you don't have to do a lot of explaining on how to make a film. They know that. Nor do they want to know that you're the next Truffaut. Like, we don't need to know that. We want to know about your project. So being careful around hiring a grant writer, I would be very careful about hiring a grant writer. I would probably try it myself first, and then get people in the industry or your friends to read it over. Again, you can always ask me to read it over and see if it makes sense before. And if I say, oh, this doesn't really make sense to me, and you can't really figure out how to fix it, then I would turn to the grant writer.
Wonderful. And on that note as well, Stephanie's one of our industry delegates at the festival this year. She's joining our virtual coffee sessions later this afternoon. She's with one of our partners, Marquee Insurance. And so she says, just a reminder, you can get insurance quotes for your budgets. Quotes are always free, and you don't want a surprise if you're awarded your grants and are out of money and can't fulfill your requirements. So that's a great note. So Connor Forrest. Hi, Peter. Thank you so much for the presentation. I learned so much. I have a question for the panel. Does a short film in post-production needing funding for sound design, coloring, original score, etc., qualify? And could I show a rough cut in part of the application? I guess we could start with Peter first.
Yes. Yeah, it qualifies. So you can apply for production or post-production. That would be considered a post-production application. And yes, we'd want to see the what it is that you've made. So we'd want to see the production and what you're going to do as a post-production. Again, the deadline's not till October 15th, and you would not be able to use the funding until you have received a response from the Toronto Arts Council. So you might be sitting on your project until December, January, probably January, to use that funding.
Awesome. Peggy or Shelley, I'm not sure if that question would really pertain to either of you, if you have any thoughts.
CMF basically has a rule that, well, first of all, we don't unfortunately fund short films, but our only rule really is that the project cannot have aired on any platform or television network before you apply. But generally, because we operate with broadcasters needing to support you, a broadcaster is probably not going to want to come in on a project that's almost finished, because they tend to like to be there from the beginning to help guide the creativity. So it probably would not be something that CMF could do.
Right.
Yeah, at Telefilm, either we don't support short films in production or post-production at the moment, but we do support post-production applications through our production program. So if your project is, and the budget is anywhere over 250,000, you can come in with a post application.
Awesome. Okay, great. So we have another question. Apologies if I'm saying your name incorrectly, Message. What qualifies you being a francophone outside of Quebec, either CMF or Telefilm?
Yeah, I can start. So for our Francophone minority program, Francophone outside of Quebec is defined as having a head office outside the province of Quebec for at least 3 years, with all of the shareholders residing outside the province of Quebec for at least 3 years prior to the date of the funding application submission. And they must primarily do their development and production slates in French. So, if you're a producer that does the majority of your production in English and just decides to do a French show suddenly, you wouldn't probably qualify. You have to have a history of doing your projects in French for at least 3 years.
Yeah, no, for telefilm, we don't have a specific fund that's geared towards OLMC communities, but we just generally, it's your, your main, your mother tongue. If you're English and you're living in Quebec, you would, and for at the moment, we don't, it's a voluntary declaration, so we don't dig deep in the eligibility. So, and for French, it's the same thing. If you're a Francophone whose mother tongue, or you work primarily in French and you're living outside of Quebec, that's how we look at the self-identification.
Cool. Awesome. Alex Acton Jones is asking to Peter or telefilm, are there typically preferences or commonality found in the type of projects funded? As someone who's a big fan of genre film, for example, horror, crime, sci-fi, etc., is there any less likelihood to be funded in these genres that could sometimes be considered lesser than, say, drama?
I can start. No, that's one of our objectives, is to fund a diverse genre of projects. We typically do get more drama, so we try to move away from drama. So now there is no favorite genre. We want a diverse genre. We see a lot of genre at Talent through Talent to Watch. We do get a lot of horror, and which is great. But yeah, no, we definitely don't favor drama. We do want these different genres coming in.
Cool.
I like how all the Talent to Watch wants to make horror. I wonder what that says. No, we don't have any dramas or any genre that we favor. But often the panel wants to see something that's different, something that's exciting, a story that hasn't been told, a new take on a story. Often they'll sit around the table, and this might be a slate against telefilm, and they'll sort of say, oh, telefilm would fund this, so we won't fund it. So they're looking for projects that really sort of break out of molds, are from voices that have not been heard, or are speaking through ways that don't get heard on television or on screens very often. And that can happen in any genre.
Awesome. Yeah, I would, I mean, obviously I'm not a funder in any way, but I would agree with that. I think, funding organizations want to promote and fund as diverse genres as possible. And there are super cool horror and sci-fi films, not necessarily shot on $1, $2, $3, millions of dollars of budget. A lot of them are very simple and human and I guess stationed more in very specific locations. So so Connor Forrest asks, one more question I have specifically for Peggy. I'm planning to apply to next year's Talent to Watch program for a supposed first fiction feature. It's a story that's loosely based off a short I recently shot. Would being able to showcase the short film at all support their application? It's about a subject material that I feel needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, absolutely. We've supported many Talent to Watch projects that are based on shorts. I think there was one recent one that premiered that screened at Hot Docs, Framing Agnes, Chase Joynt's project, that was based on his short of the same title. So absolutely, if the jury will screen your previous work, will look at your short, and it doesn't, just because your feature is based on that short, that doesn't disqualify you at all. So
awesome.
Definitely get that short finished.
Cool. Fantastic. Well, I guess on that note, we don't have any more questions, but on behalf of myself and Jocelyn and the Future Film Showcase, thank you all for joining us today. Peggy, Peter, and Shelley, thank you for giving us your time and being able to chat with our audience. And this panel has been recorded, so if either anyone who's watched today would like to rewatch it or even send it maybe to some others, it'll be posted in the future on our YouTube, the Future Film Showcase's YouTube channel. We're also going to have closed captioning on this as well. Thank you all so much. Another round of applause for our Director of Accessibility, Carmel Cachero, who has been excellent today in giving us ASL interpretation. Bravo. Amazing. The Future Film Showcase continues from now until June 25th. We have more in-person events tomorrow with our web and TV workshops and screenings, as well as our short film program, all happening at the Scotiabank Theater. All our films are streaming on CBC Gem starting on Monday, June 20th. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.